the appropriate allocation that would be in that category is vertical CIP.
Yeah, so go ahead, bring it on, yes.
No, that was my question.
Yes.
Define vertical CIP.
Generally, that's what it is.
Okay, and then the dollar value in that category? I don't
I
remember.
do not recall, Councilmember, I was defining the general philosophy on how we do it, but I also said that it doesn't work perfectly. And I'm well aware that you could use more CIP in the vertical CIP. Councilmember started.
And I'll chime in on that as well. I just have to ask the question, what is the percentage change in construction costs from May 6th to June 24th? Because I don't want to beat this dead horse, but I want the actual percentage change from the time they calculated from May 6th to June 24th. I think it's only fair so that I can understand the numbers and rework my numbers and make sure that there's not anything else that my colleague, Councilmember Costello, alluded to that might be a part of this calculation.
Construction costs, yes. Putting the 380 infrastructure costs,
My district?
putting the 380 infrastructure costs onto the CIP side rather than the operating side, which is how I was able to provide the $5 million to get the first half of the council district service funds. In addition, we shaved a little bit off of the amount of ad valorem that goes onto the debt on the CIP side in order to, again, keep more money in the operating funds. So a combination of things tends to flatten out what our debt capacity is on the CIP side. So I'm happy to provide you a breakdown.
Yeah, I appreciate
So
the
it's not only one thing, there are multiple things.
I have to do my due diligence for my district and understand the numbers, and I can't understand a moving target without all the factors. I have to understand what all the factors are, and one of those that you highlighted was increased construction costs. And so I can't, and I'm not trying to be ugly. I'm just trying to understand the difference, how it could change so significantly between the date of our meeting was May 6th through today's date. So I would appreciate just having all of the factors.
Councilmember, there are multiple items, at least three big ones, which I just mentioned, and we'll
You'll get those
enumerate
first.
those. But I would also point out that the reason that the construction costs are important is that we don't have any, we eliminated any contingency funds on that side of the ledger as well. So all of the, we can break down,
And one more point that I think that I
380 is the council district service budget and construction costs.
And then one more thing that I would like to make sure that I highlight, because I think it's very important to my colleagues that were on council with me in our first term, is when we did agree to rebuild, the voters voted for rebuild, then we were charged with how it would be handled. And it was presented to us that our NSR projects would be handled prior to rebuild, or would stay on the books at the very least. Now I've got an NSR, and I think Councilmember Cohen has an NSR that have continued to be pushed out and drawn out. And I don't think that the folks that petitioned 20 years ago, maybe, I don't know how many years ago they petitioned for those streets, that are finally getting them. Now we're seeing them pushed again when other projects are being put ahead. So I think that commitment should be honored as part of that rebuild agreement, and we should see those NSR projects prioritized. Thank you.
Councilmember Green.
Okay, Mayor, just for clarification, because I want to be clear about this. When we were passing the budget relative to these 380 agreements, my understanding that the costs were already baked in, that in fact we would not be pulling, because those 380 agreements, a lot of those were not located in our districts. And so, am I to now understand that the 380 agreements were not baked in, and that now our projects have now suffered because because I was told that if we didn't approve it or if we didn't move forward, that we would suffer. Those projects had to be funded some other way, and thus our projects would suffer. But, you know, we were never told that if in fact we move forward with the 380, that our existing projects were gonna move. So is that what happened?
Councilmember, I'm happy to map out all of these, but if you, and we can bring Mr. Dow down here, there's only so much money. The way that we squeezed the initial $5.5 million for the council district service funds that we put in was part of that.
But this is
But
CIP.
I said it, yes, sir, but it all comes out of.
When we entered into those agreements with those entities on the 380s, did we not budget out of Rebuild Houston or DDSR FR to make sure that okay, we line item this, but before we line item, obviously we looked at our existing CIP, so we wouldn't have to. I would hope not take from somewhere else. I would think we would have the dollars available. Did we not do that?
No, sir. We knew we had an obligation, and those dollars, if they don't come out of the CICP side, have to come out of the operating side. We anticipate, Councilmember, as you will recall, most of those 380s were passed prior to last year, and council members chose to spend every bit of contingency. There's no slack in the budget. I'm not trying to cast blame. It is a fact. There's no slack in the budget.
But if we knew that those dollars were already committed, how could we then go to a developer and say we can then come back if those dollars? I mean, we've gone out to our neighborhoods and said these projects were coming in this time, and so now if in fact the issue is.
And they would be paid, the 380 commitment would have been paid out of the general fund. It's going to be paid one way, one place or the other.
Thank you.
Councilmember Kuba.
Councilmember Green, thank you for the good questions and enlightening the matter. When we vote on many of these 380 agreements, we don't understand sometimes the unintended consequences and how it may eventually affect other things. Thank you, Councilmember Costello, for bringing up what you did and explaining that. I voted for your budget amendment last week. I'm assuming that Councilmember Boykins, had he been here, he would have voted for it as well. So thank you very much for your good input, and I certainly appreciate it.
Councilmember Strader.
Mayor, I want to take this opportunity to make sure that I'm hearing a lot of things about the downsides of 380 agreements, and I want to make sure that these tools are available to us to bring good things to our districts and to our city. So these tools are available to us, but I think that we need to understand as council members what direction and the audit trail is provided to us so that we can see when the anticipated income is coming in and when it's paid back, or the funding sources. We need to understand that so that we understand the full impact to our district. Not that we wouldn't do this, it's that we understand when we're approving things, what unintended consequences, as my colleague may have said. I think it's very important that these tools are not put in a negative light to the public, because they are available for very good things that have made a difference in many of our communities. So I would just have to make those comments at this point to the public. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I know that many districts have benefited from the 380s. The challenge is that since we commit to paying for the infrastructure work, and it is the infrastructure work that the 380s, the private developer does out of future revenue, we make the commitment, but we don't know when they're going to hit their triggers. So I can't exactly budget that it's going to be in 2014 or 2015, because they have to generate a certain amount of property tax revenue. Now we estimate, and they have to generate a certain amount of sales tax revenue depending on the 380, and then we pay the obligation. It's like any other debt obligation. You pay your debts first, and it all comes out of the same pot of money.
But at the same time, if we could fine-tune that accounting as knowing that it's coming in from that funding source, in other words, that ad valorem tax or whatever it is, that particular line item so
You're
that,
saying, are you saying segregated?
if it's possible, so that we can clearly identify the revenue source, that it's coming from there, so that we turn around and pay it back, and we don't spend it on something else. This was a commitment that was made as part of the agreement. And we owe that money back to that developer based on infrastructure that they put out of their pocket at their cost at that time.
Correct.
And then because of that, now the community has benefited in my particular agreement. As a result of that, the median income is going to raise, the retail is going to raise. There's going to be economic development impact positive on my community as a result of that. But because if not for the developer putting the money out of their own pocket first, and then we pay them back out of the increment that they generated off of the improvements, we would not have that money. So they should line up, and we shouldn't base any other spending based on that revenue. So it's almost, there has to be some kind of anticipation of what that revenue would be and segregate it at the time and budget it accordingly based on projections on those projects. Is that clear as mud? Thank you.
No, yes, ma'am, I understand the concept. I don't know whether it would work or not. The revenue that comes in, we don't segregate. It goes into the general fund, and we,
We're going to segregate it back into segregate.
yeah, I understand the concept. Councilmember Green?
Mayor, I fully